All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, depending on what class you are watching this. Happy Thursday. Hopefully, your day is going well. What I would like to do today is just spend a quick few minutes discussing the end here of chapter 3. And yesterday, as a class, we had spoken about John Locke. John Locke, a philosopher of the Enlightenment, who, writing in the 1600s, is going to have a profound effect on the colonies moving forward. And certainly the title of this section, Colonial Identity, I think it goes hand in hand with the things that Locke was writing about 100 plus years before the American Revolution. No one could have ever imagined at the time of Locke as to the impact it would have on a group of colonies that decided to declare their independence from Great Britain. So yesterday we said that John Locke argued that all people are born with natural rights, okay, that among them are life, liberty, and property. All right, so each of these three here. I mentioned yesterday that Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, will wind up changing it from life, liberty, to the pursuit of happiness instead of property. And we'll get into as to why he said that in chapter 5. But furthermore, what Locke said was that a government, any government that existed, their sole purpose was to protect the rights of the people. Not just the laws, but more importantly, the idea of life, liberty, and property. And his argument was that if a government doesn't do its job, in the same way that if I was to come into a History 7 class and start doing finger painting with you for the entire year, if a government doesn't do its job, the people who were governed have the right to overthrow it. Okay, so I gave the example yesterday. If I'm not doing my job, Brother Ken is within his full right to find a new history teacher. All right, if I'm sitting there and I should be teaching the American Revolution and the Constitution and we're doing finger painting and nap time, Brother Ken's going to say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction and find a teacher that actually is going to teach the students. So that parallels with John Locke, all right? And in 1776, when our founding fathers are sitting in Philadelphia, the idea comes up that, wow, okay, maybe we should, in fact, declare our independence on this premise. So when we look at the Declaration of Independence, although Jefferson writes it, it is very much inspired by the philosopher John Locke. The other philosopher I want to speak on is a French philosopher by the name of Montesquieu. Okay, it sounds like another French person with the name there, Montesquieu. But he's a little bit different than John Locke as far as examining human rights because he was someone that looked at a government's relationship with people and felt as though that the best defined government or the best sort of government is one that separated its powers, that it was never given to one single person. So he would be someone definitely against an absolute monarchy. It shouldn't even be given to one group of people. What Montesquieu felt as though, as far as his idea of separation of powers, is that there should be different branches of government and that each branch should have their own responsibility. And the reason he felt is this is these two things listed here. He felt as though this is going to protect the rights of the people and the idea that no single branch would become more powerful. So in the same way we talked about a triangular trade, and sorry if this isn't drawn to scale here, okay, Montesquieu basically thinks of government like an equilateral triangle. Equilateral triangle. The idea is that a triangle has three sides. All sides are equal, and so are the angles of those sides. And I know I'm not the best drawer, and I'm drawing with my finger here as I record this lesson, but essentially these angles here, okay, should all be the same, all right? And this side of each triangle here, they should all be equal. And what Montesquieu believed is that a legislature or a legislative branch was very important because that's going to be the group of people that make laws. Now, we've seen this word already as far as Parliament is concerned. Parliament is a two-house legislature that has the ability to make laws. Okay, so Montesquieu believes in that. But he also believes that it should be separate from the person or group of people that are asked to enforce the law or in some ways carry out the law. And that's where he believed in an executive branch. Okay? an executive branch to execute the law, to enforce the law, to carry out the law. That's going to be the person or group of people that work hand in hand with the legislative branch that are going to make the laws. Okay, so his argument was this. If I'm going to sit here and I'm going to make a law for this class right now, okay, that every time you walk in, you need to salute the flag and you need to sit down in your seat and always make sure that you eat pizza on Fridays. And that's a law that we talk out in class and we vote on it. The idea is that that's my law that I created. Obviously, I want you guys to abide by that. However, it's important, though, that there's a separate entity that enforces that law. So another example, the student handbook. That is something that's written by the administration. Okay, Brother Kenneth. Brother Kenneth isn't walking up and down the hallways every day to make sure that shirts are tucked in and top buttons are buttoned. He relegates that power to teachers or to the deans. Okay, and in the same way with that, you see the legislative or the Kellenberg administration makes laws. Okay, it's the teacher's jobs to enforce it. Okay, it's a good way to look at it. But the other branch, which is unique to Montesquieu, is that there should be a judicial branch. And the judicial branch is called as a series of people that would pass judgment on the laws. Are laws fair or unfair? Are they just or unjust? Are they moral or immoral? Okay, so if I make a law that is completely unfair and people vote on it and say it is a law, the judicial branch kind of is like the final revision and say, well, wait a second here, what was in that law really isn't very fair, isn't very constitutional, so to speak. So that is where Montesquieu believes that the best government, again, all three of these branches are equal in their power, they're equal in their responsibility, okay, but they are to work with each other. It's kind of similar to a checks and balances system. The idea that each of these branches is to check up on each other. They're supposed to help limit each other, but at the same time also help to enforce each other. Now, during the colonial era, this doesn't necessarily have much of an emphasis placed on the colonies at the time. However, moving forward, after the American Revolution, we're going to see our founding fathers sitting down to write out the Constitution, and they say, well, wait a second, what if we were to take a page out of Montesquieu's book, The Spirit of Laws, which was the book that he wrote about the separation of powers, and we had a legislative branch, a two-house legislative branch, like England does. Let's have a Senate and a House of Representatives. Let's have an executive known as the President, and a judicial branch like the Supreme Court. And those three branches together are going to work together. Why? Because it is to protect the rights of the people. Okay, so both Montesquieu and Locke, it comes back, and aside from their government beliefs, it always comes back to protecting the rights of the people. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 3. Okay, so for tomorrow, you guys have your test. Okay, underneath this slide, write down test review. Okay, test review. All right, just so you know, the test is going to take on a similar format as it has from the previous tests. You will have 45 Scantron questions. Those questions will be multiple choice and matching columns. Notice I said columns plural. So a little MC squared, multiple choice matching columns. Each of those is going to be worth 2 points. And you are going to have a written section worth 10. Okay, you are going to have to write something out. It's not going to be a chart. It's not going to be, fill in the explorers. It is going to be a written response. Partial credit will be given. Now, it would be very difficult for me to give you a theme of this chapter. As I said, this chapter is a little bit of a buffet, all right? There's a little bit of everything in it, so there's no real review sheet for me to give you, but these are the topics that I would make sure that you study. Make sure you know the English traditions from Section 1, the Magna Carta, Parliament, Bill of Rights, what are each of them and what are their differences? What are the Navigation Acts? Okay, we talked about 3 of them specifically. Okay, if that is a matching column, a multiple choice question, or even a part 2, you should be able to describe what the navigations are. Navigation Acts, I apologize. Make sure you know the role of men, women, and children in the colonies, a handful of questions on that. Make sure you know the social classes, handful of questions on that. Make sure you know the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, the Atlantic slave trade from kind of the triangular trade to the Middle Passage to slave codes. Section 3, essentially, make sure you know that. And then in Section 4, all right, look over Locke and Montesquieu. Look over Great Awakening. Okay, there's not that many people in this chapter. There might be a much shorter Who Am I section on this test. Okay, but look through your notes. You have 3 quizzes to look through. All right, sections 1, 2, and 3. Okay, if you didn't get those quizzes back, feel free to stop by at the end of the day today. I will be in my office. And if you have any questions about the test, I will be around for extra help, or feel free to email me. Okay, this short lesson will be on my website for the foreseeable future, so if you missed anything from my so-called review, feel free to take a look at that. So in telling you big themes or big things to study, I did go over significant portions of the test, so you know. Okay, and I did allude to as to what your part 2 could be. All right. English traditions, know the navigation acts, know your social classes, know facts about the Atlantic slave trade, and know about the Enlightenment and Great Awakening. All right, so right now you guys have an assignment in Schoology. Some of you may have submitted it already. That means that this is now time for you to sit quietly and study for your test. Okay, if you didn't work on assignment 3.4b, now would be the time to do so. Please make sure that you submit that assignment by the end of the day. Okay, please make sure that you are polite and respectful to your sub. Make sure you say thank you on your way out. And like I said, I am here today, so if any of you guys have any questions, feel free to stop by after school. Okay, thanks.